Booze tax?
Yep. Ed, booze, board, admissions.
That number surprised me just a little bit. Was that just for October or was that through October?
That was through October.
But it's been down periodically throughout the whole year.
Mr. Coachy, did you want to explain the scraper or any of that?
Actually, I think Kevin can talk a little bit about the scraper if there's any questions.
Is there some questions on it?
I don't have any.
Okay.
That's the scraper. This is the scraper for the landfill, and I think you got a.
Yeah, it was budgeted in 2019 for 450,000. We're running into some problems with some of our other landfill equipment that's required on a daily basis to be used. So we kind of been researching some used pieces. We're thinking if we can purchase a used piece this year for around 60,000, that's what this is for. That'll save us our 450,000 for our 2019 budget, and we might be looking at purchasing a bowl mag in place of that in 19. But we're going to apply for a state grant to help fund the bowl mag.
What is a bowl mag?
It's a landfill compactor.
Okay.
We've stuck recently about $40,000 into one of them. We've got a lot of problems with one. And it's something that we can apply for a state grant, and hopefully that's why we pulled it here, because we found access to a little extra money in there. And we're hoping that we can use that budgeted money in 19 that was for the scraper possibly towards purchase of a bowl mag, and we wouldn't even have to use all that 450 then. So we're looking.
The scraper you're getting rid of?
Well, we got a paddle scraper right now that's really old, 20-some years old. And we might even, if we get a good used one, we might even just keep that because it's not worth anything. And we're going to be looking about 3.5, 4 years to constructing cell number 4. And in the meantime, this used scraper that we're looking at purchasing, we'll use that to dig out the borrow pit, which is future cell number 4. It'll pay for that scraper just by the material that we're going to take out of there with the use of the scraper. It'll pay for that scraper in less than a year by the amount of material that we'll be removing from it. So.
Yep. Thank you. On the pay estimates, we are paying down the pool by $550,000. We've had meetings with BITS. They've got pretty much everything completed except about 3 items, and in those discussions we've withheld roughly $110,000. Are we not showing up on here? Oh.
Mayor, I was going to ask on the building permits. I see the restrooms for the city of Mitchell. Is that the Northridge Park, or what is that?
I believe it is. Right. I think that's Northridge.
That's
not
correct.
Doing the Sandy Beach yet. So.
Northridge, yes.
Okay, and that's
we're working on it.
That'll be constructed yet this fall?
We're still waiting on some supplies right now, like rafters. Once we get those in, we'll continue to proceed, weather permitting. But yeah, we're trying to get that done as soon as possible.
Okay, thanks.
Marty's building's still coming. We're working on it. The infrastructure's going in for it. The building might not happen now until next spring.
Kyle, can you tell us where we're at with burying the posts down the alley?
Yes. Actually, the utilities companies are working. You might have seen them out there. They're working the underground, putting in the boxes and pedestals. So Northwestern will be in Friday, actually, to work on transferring the power. And then we're hoping by the end of the month or the first week into December, they're taking the lines down, or taking the poles down.
Further questions? There you go. Thank you. Thank you. It's easier to read here than up there.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
We have a motion by Mrs. Charts,
Minus item G.
Minus item G.
Okay, second.
second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion?
There's a couple appointments in here too.
There are, that fills the Community Services Board.
Okay.
So that board will be full now. Working on the other ones yet. Okay. Anybody in the audience wish to address these items? Okay. Roll call, please.
Dosher. McCardle.
Aye.
Barrington. Allen.
Aye.
Charts. Aye. Smith. Sabers. Rice.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Item 7, citizens input. If you need to address the mayor and members of the city council on an item that is not on the agenda, excluding personnel items, please come to the podium, state your name and your concern. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes. Items will be considered, but no action will be taken at this time. Does anybody wish to address the council? Billy, did you want to?
Actually, Scott Schmidt with Corn Palace. I just had some information. I've been receiving a lot of texts. Sorry, Billy. Calls, emails in regards to decorating process. Stephanie, I'm not sure if you have the pictures. If you're doing some research, after the renovations, our front 3 murals, on the 2 in the front of the Corn Palace, the first one on the southwest corner of the building used to be 20 feet by 10 feet. They're now 30 feet by 20 feet. So we've added approximately 1,200 square feet of corn hanging area. So the side murals, those are the new murals, as you can see. And then the comparison to the old murals right there. So those small murals on the side that are about 10 by 10 take anywhere from 2 to 4 days, and that's about 100 square feet. And we've added around 1,200 square feet. So 100 square feet traditionally will take you 2 to 4 days to hang. So when you start talking about working days, that's where the added time has been on, along with the canopy overhangs that were taken off of every mural. That's extra rye and sourdock that we have to hang on the Corn Palace. I estimated a combined 650 square feet. So an extra 650 square feet of rye and sourdock have to be hung as well as torn off. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, but I figured I'd bring it up since I've been receiving a lot of calls and
So what's
texts.
your projected completion date? Do you have one?
I would probably guesstimate beginning of December. So
Would you have it done before Parade of Lights or after then? That's what the questions I've got today.
it's looking like after, if I'm going to be honest, yeah. So
You short of help or what's going on,
nope,
Scott?
just extra time. We've only had the renovation done for 4 years, I believe, of which one of them we did not decorate. So the rain at the beginning of the year pushed us back a few days, as it did every farmer. And when they weren't able to get in the fields for corn, neither were we. So that's where we're at.
Thank you. I didn't mean to surprise you, Bill. You told me you wanted it.
I was working on my computer here.
Turn that game off.
I just wanted to let the council and the public know that the city of Mitchell was awarded both a gold and silver award, or gold and platinum award from the South Dakota Municipal League for safety again this year, which means our work comp claims are low. We are doing a lot of training. Every department turns in safety training every month to Human Resources, and we've done all of the things that are required and more to obtain the good quality safety program. And we want to continue that. We want to thank all of the employees. And we also want to thank you as a council for supporting us in our safety efforts.
Anybody else wish to address the council? Okay. Item 8, hearing on the application of the Corn Palace Shrine Club for a special event liquor license located at the Masonic Lodge for December 1st, 2018 for a wedding.
Move to approve.
Second. Motion by Mr. Allen, second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this one? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 9, action to approve application for renewal of liquor and wine licenses for 2019.
Public Safety would have no opposition to renewal of any of them.
Thank you.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Jerks. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address them? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Board of Adjustment, entertain a motion for the City Council to recess and sit as the Board of Adjustment.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Barrington, second by Mr. McCardle. Discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to address it? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 11, hearing on Bill and Barbara Goldhammer, 2020 and 2040 East 8th Avenue. Bill and Barbara Goldhammer request a conditional use permit to operate a retail and trades business at 2020 and 2040 East 8th Avenue, legally described as Lot 1, X Lot A and B of Lot 1 and Lot A of Lot 1 of Colela's subdivision, south quarter of Section 14, northeast quarter of Section 23, Township 103 North, Range 60 West, Davis County, South Dakota. Property is zoned urban development.
Mayor and council members, you can see on that aerial, there's actually two parcels, but somehow the pictometry picks it up wrong. It doesn't pick up the other address, but there's two addresses. One is their addresses for the shed on to the west, and one is to the house. So both this conditional use would go to both addresses and both legals, because not 100% sure where the business would be located, but we just assumed it would be both. But anyway, the Planning Commission did hold a hearing on this request and did recommend approval with one condition, that it only be applicable to Mr. and Mrs. Goldhammer. So if they cease the business, it doesn't go along. The conditional use ceases as well. So that was their recommendation. Mr. Goldhammer is here, or if there's anybody else who wanted to comment about it.
So what kind of a,
I'll let him.
what are you using, or what kind of business is it?
I'm in the used equipment business, tractors.
Billy, state your name, please.
Oh, Bill Goldhammer.
Thank you.
I have a business west of Mitchell that I'm going to end up getting out of and then retire, and I just kind of want to have something to do when I retire. And I have a new building up out there, and I contacted 10 of my direct neighbors, and nobody had an issue with it. So I was originally going to do it up on First Street, and Neil drove out, and he thought it'd be better to be done by my shed. So that's what we went through.
So when you say equipment,
It's tractors, payloaders. I sold 10 loaders out of there last year. I mean, and nobody even, I use them at home. We have a farm there, and I guess I really don't even have to have a permit. I just thought it would be, neighborly to let people know what I'm planning on doing. I mean, it's not going to be a full-fledged implement dealer business. I probably won't even have any employees.
okay.
So that's it.
Move to approve with the conditions set forth by the Planning Commission.
Motion by Mr. Allen, second by Mr. Sabers. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this one? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Hearing on Rosewood Court Assisted Living Center, 2101 North Sanborn. Rosewood Court Assisted Living Center, 2101 North Sanborn, legally described as the north 237.8 feet, except the west 56.8 feet. Lot F, a replat of lots 100 and 101, the northeast quarter of Section 16, Township 103 North, Range 60 West of the 5th Prime Meridian, City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota, is requesting a backyard variance of 8 feet 8.5 inches versus 25 feet is required, and a side yard variance of 4 foot 7 inches versus 5 feet is required for the construction of addition. Property is zoned R4.
Again, the Planning Commission did hold a hearing on this request and did unanimously recommend approval. Basically, if you saw their plans in there, they're adding some units towards the north on both of their ends, and then which is also going to bring it out just a little bit further. So they're adding some, like I said, additional units. Yeah, there you kind of see them towards the north. There's what they say the proposed addition. So, as you see, it's going. That's where the backyard setback is, and then also they're kind of they're coming out on that office extension, I believe, if I'm correct on that, on where it says the 6-7. So, again, there was no opposition to this. So I believe there's representatives of Rosewood or the builder if you have questions.
So you'll be closest, I think I saw Michelle there. You'll be closest to Countryside, and they have no problem with it.
Nobody responded back.
Oh, okay. Because it seems like that would be the logical person who would have concerns. Move approval.
Second it. Motion by Mrs. Chark, second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this one? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 13, hearing on Alex Hartman and Alexandra Garrett's 1513 West Hanson Avenue. Alex Hartman and Alexandra Garrett's are requesting a conditional use permit for a family residential child care center in their home at 1513 West Hanson, legally described as Lot 13, Block 8, Potter's Addition, City of Mitchell, Davidson County, South Dakota. Property is zoned R3.
Again, Mayor and council members, this was heard by the Planning Commission, and they did recommend approval with 3 conditions. The conditions are, 1, that it's non-transferable. So in other words, if the applicants move, they'd have to reapply, or somebody can't just assume theirs. Also, if she stopped business for a period of 6 months or longer, then a new application would be required, and then also pass a fire inspection.
Motion approved with conditions. Second.
Motion by Mr. McCardle, second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this one? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Reconvene the City Council. Entertain a motion for the Board of Adjustment to adjourn, and the City Council to reconvene in regular session.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Allen. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 15, second reading of ordinance O 2018-13, an ordinance of the City of Mitchell that changes the zoning district classification of real property legally described as lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 13, and 14, and the north 200 feet of alley all in Block 24, Raleigh 2nd Edition, City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota, from R2 Single Family Residential District to TWC Transportation, Warehouse, and Commercial District. Now, we heard substantial testimony on this at the last meeting, so we would ask that you bring new information forward. You're welcome to come up and talk. State your name. Please keep it as new information.
Good evening, Mayor Everson and city councilors. You know, I must have missed it. I didn't hear a motion for the approval of the minutes, and I did have input on the minutes, and that was from the last meeting. That is
part of the consent agenda.
I'm sorry, say again?
Part of the consent agenda in the very first part.
Okay. What my point was to that was when I reviewed the minutes from the last meeting, there was none of the opposition or even Mr. Betchen's comments were included. It was just as though it was a straight approval. And I remember last time you explained it was an approval as a placeholder, but my concern was there were people that spoke at the last meeting in opposition to this who may not be here tonight and not able to have their voices heard, so or considered in that regard. So that's one of my concerns by not having complete minutes for the Betchen rezoning issue, the lots that we're discussing. And I don't know if that can be readdressed or not for correction to the minutes.
Yes, we've got video record of it.
Okay.
Assuming that the recording worked from last meeting.
Yeah, it just looked like a straight approval of the rezoning. It didn't, and nothing else. And so that was a little
this whole meeting is
disconcerting.
taped and placed online, so you can go back and review it, or anybody can.
Okay.
Interested in doing so.
All right. Okay. So under the premise of new business, there's two things. If you can open up the neighbors' letters, is one thing. There was Okay, that was in there last time, the disapprove. The approve was in there last time. Oh, there's a new approval. Okay. No, the supplemental is the new stuff, but there is a new disapproval letter from. Say again?
This one right here.
No, it's a disapproval letter. It's an actual letter or email type that was included in it. It's from Josh and Amber Kurtenbach.
We have that. It's in our packet.
Okay, it's in your packet. Okay. Then the supplemental is the next thing that had a lot of the new business in it. I don't know where that supplemental is at. It's called Betchen Supplemental under item 15.
Oh, go north. Go up. There it goes. Very last one there.
So in this, we had submitted more signatures in the petition, and things I wanted to point out on that was, well, I'll get into that in a minute. We had new signatures there. I think it was 14 or 13 or 14. I don't know if any of you did not have an opportunity to see this letter. Was there anybody that did not have an opportunity to see it and read it? Okay. So if you can scroll back up, I want to hit some key highlights here. Go to the letter, page 1, and scroll down a little bit. Okay, during the November the 5th meeting, one of the things that transpired and I challenged was the approval of non-existent votes. And that was where there were 11 non-responses. And as you see in this, those notices were sent first-class postage, and so there was no objective evidence to show that the owners ever received them. In addition to that, there's no objective evidence to show the owners opened them or read them or threw them in the trash or what they did. There's no way to determine why the notices were unreturned. They may have not received them. They may be in the hospital, accident, on business trip, something.
This is the same thing you told us last time. I mean,
yes.
The exact words. So
yes.
Move on, please.
So our point is that motion to accept those 11 should be rescinded. Because they're non-existent. You can't prove their existence as an approval.
There was never a motion to accept them. It was just a comment that no return is taken as positive. There was no motion made on it.
And I just have to point out for the council's information that there's no need for there to be an affirmative approval. Letters that are sent out are to give notice. It's not. There's no requirement that you have to get a majority approval to proceed with the rezoning.
Okay. Okay, so the other part of it, and this was not addressed last time, but it is included in the 14 businesses or whatever that property owners that were sent notices. There's 2 businesses in there, or 2 personnel, if you will, that get 2 votes. And so I was a little concerned over that. Mitchell Concrete Company and Mr. Robideau. I don't know why they would be listed twice in there. Who owns the property? Inherently, by Mr. Robideau signing off on the application, that's a vote of approval right there, because Mr. Betchen does not own the property. And in order to gain approval for that application, he has to have some type of an agreement with Mr. Robideau. So inherently, there's a vote there. You throw it, but it's unclear as to who owns the property. In one part of the application, it says Mitchell Concrete is the owner, but Mr. Robideau signed off on the application. Then
you're going through the same thing you went through before. Please go to the new stuff. And they're not votes.
This is not new.
They're not votes. They're words. You just get a say in it.
Okay.
Nobody's voting. The voting will come from the council.
All right. So. Okay. So. Scroll up then to keep going up in the letter. Okay, so the summary. Okay. So during the last meeting, Mr. Betchen had essentially denigrated our petition, and he made a statement that was questioning the credibility and the significance of the petition and signatures, and what I want to do is address that tonight. While it may seem insignificant to some, I want to point out that we have a South Dakota congressman, legislator that has signed off, not in his official capacity, but as a private citizen, a county commissioner, an attorney, another attorney's wife, 3 school teachers, retired teacher, 3 pastors of local churches, retail grocery store manager, and assistant manager. My point being is you have some prominent citizens in this city that have signed off on this petition, and I would say they don't take things lightly. I'm not saying that the other people on there aren't prominent citizens. They are in my mind. But when you denigrate the petition and those that are in it, you need to understand that there are people that in it that truly hold positions of influence in our society. Okay. One of the questions that came up during the last council meeting to Mr. Betchen was about landscaping and what he was going to do. And what he mentioned is that it was going to be a gravel parking lot. He said that he didn't have a green thumb, and maybe he might be able to do something. His wife might be able to do something. Well, that caused me to start researching the city code on this thing. And the city code, the way I'm interpreting that, and granted, I'm not an attorney, but what I read out of that is he was required to submit a landscaping plan with his application. And that wasn't there. So we see that as an incomplete application, which just by that nature it should be disapproved anyway.
I can address that point as well. The code provisions that he's referencing are in relation to seeking a building permit, so they're not really applicable to this stage where you're talking about rezoning. When he brings in a plan for a building permit, then he'd need to meet these requirements.
Okay. And scroll up a little further. Mr. Betchen had referred to the apartment complexes on West 8th Avenue as businesses. They're not businesses. They're homes to the people that live in them. And they have a much better aesthetic appearance than with landscape property than would a commercial industrial building. That doesn't seem to fit. It just follows the green space for that along that block. We've heard that one city councilor had asked, what if we were to put this across the street instead? And our answer to that is we would fight just as vigorously against that, because it's still putting it across the street, meaning rezoning or putting Mr. Betchen's business across the street, is the same principle. It's right there in the neighborhood. It's right close to the middle school. It creates the same hazards. So we would oppose that. Basically, as previously addressed, there's no valid reason for not disapproving this. It should be disapproved. And forgive me, I forgot. I don't remember if I said my name when I stood up. I'm Dwight Stadler. So,
Thank you.
And that's all I have this evening.
Okay. Thank you. Further comments with new information? Okay. Council. Mr. Betchen, did you have anything to add?
Hi, my name's Dave Betchen. I'm owner of Betchen Electric. I guess the only thing that I was going to add tonight was it's been brought up, 3 things on these signs that have been put up across town is that I'm only after my own personal wealth. I'm lowering their property taxes by putting this building there, and I'm endangering the children of the middle school, or children, I guess, in essence. The cost of land in Mitchell is high. So as a business owner, if I can buy a piece of land for a lower price, I don't think I'm after my own personal wealth. I think it's smart business on my part to go after something like that. And as far as lowering property taxes on the neighbors, I don't think that that's necessarily true. If you build your building right and make your property look presentable and do a clean job there, I think it can actually increase the value of some people's properties. And as far as endangering the children, I have a large family. I know all about, protecting children and enforcing my guys to drive carefully. And we have talked with Mebius Nursery on on doing landscaping there, and it's pretty primitive right now, just without knowing the full status of what we're doing with this building right now. But there is stuff in the works, and you know, I do envision our building looking very nice on the outside with some nice landscaping. And I guess really, unless you have any other questions, I don't have much to add to it.
Are you planning to add brick? Did I hear?
Well, there was talk that like the bottom 4 foot, we might do brick. I haven't got a final cost back from the contractor on how much that would add to the cost of the building, but if it's something that isn't going to, it wouldn't be actual brick. It would probably be the siding brick that would look like brick.
I think he's going to have to bring on TWC, he has to bring a plan back, doesn't he? Not to the Planning Commission? Okay.
So
my mistake.
That I have asked for some prices on that, but I have not got it back yet.
Okay, thank you.
Dave, quick question.
Yeah.
The metal structure that's kitty corner from this piece of property that we're discussing, the other building, the outbuilding that's across from that, would you say that your new building is going to look much nicer than that, or the same, or?
Oh, I mean, I think it's going to look, I mean, I don't want to put down anybody's building, but I think
Absolutely not. I'm not trying to go there.
Right. I mean, there's a building that I have in mind that I've looked at on Norway Street there. I'm not sure the owner's name of it. For sure, it's a blue building right there on Norway and Raleigh. It's a very nice looking building. And if I do brick on the bottom 4 foot, that would definitely enhance it quite a bit.
And more of the point is not necessarily putting down the building kitty corner from you, it's just the fact that we have another building very similar to what we're talking about tonight, exactly across from the same spot that we're looking at, which I do believe your building will look just as nice, if not much nicer than the one appropriate across.
Right.
So just the point that I want to have the council know what we have exactly in that immediate area, which is no more than a rock throw across the street.
You know, I guess the only thing I would finally add is, you know, it comes down to, I would really like to have this piece of ground, and I know Mr. Sadler, Dwight, would like to have it as well. I know the neighbor in the middle is concerned about the garage. I'm not concerned about the garage. I mean, like I said last meeting, once I get water and sewer onto that property, you can close that alley if you'd like. In my opinion, it's up to you guys, obviously.
So you wouldn't have any heartburn?
I wouldn't. I have no desires for that alley to be used for my business whatsoever. But as far as one of us getting it over the other, I don't think I should have to back down just because somebody else would like the piece of property. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have a question?
I have a follow-up on it. There's something I forgot, an alibi, if you will. Okay. Again, this is Dwight Stadler. This kind of ties into Mr. Betchen's thing about the business fitting into the area. I don't know if you would care to see these photos, if it's another commercial structure, and it's actually for sale. And it's on 1017 West 8th Avenue is the physical location, but these pictures were taken off of West 7th Avenue in the 1000 block. And what you'll see there is a picture of a commercial structure that's right smack in the middle of a neighborhood and what it does. And while Mr. Betchen says it won't, he refers to lowering taxes. That's not what we said. It would lower our property values to have such a structure in our neighborhood there. While it may increase the property value of that specific lot or property that he would build on, it's going to actually lower property values for us because, as I previously said, 40 years of living, this is a prime example of what happens, and nobody's going to buy next to a place like that. So what happens is you cut your prices to sell your home. They then become rentals, and so it basically essentially destroys the neighborhood. And where do you stop and where do you draw the line at before it keeps creeping on down into other residential blocks? The other thing I want to do, and I forgot to do it, was last time I failed to do it, and that was I'd like to ask if there's the people that are here to oppose this, if you'd please stand up, anybody that's opposing this rezoning issue, to show that we do have representation here aside from
We know,
myself.
we know you have representation.
So-
They want to come up and speak. They're
Yeah,
welcome to,
but
as long
I wanted to make that clear that I'm
It's
not
been
the
very
only one.
clear to us.
So,
Very
okay.
clear.
All right. Subject to your question, sir?
I don't have it.
Okay. All right.
I have a question for you.
Sir.
So currently Dean Robidoux owns this piece of property.
That's correct.
He could, as of tomorrow, ask you to open up that alley and you have no choice to do it except move your garage. Not saying Dean Robidoux is that person, not saying he's going to do that, but he has every right to do that tomorrow morning at 8 a.m.
Nobody's arguing that.
And you guys are here obviously testifying against the fact that you don't want him to sell that piece of property. Any thoughts that, I'm just speaking out loud, any thoughts what Dean Robidoux may be thinking? Are you guys at all concerned? Because I guess I'm speaking to this point that if somebody was up there possibly making it possible that I can't sell a piece of property of this and I have the right to open that alley up, are you guys at all concerned that Dean Robidoux may open that up and knock those trees down, that you guys are going to go against? And Mr. Beschen just stated that he's willing to vacate that alleyway?
I'm not willing to compromise where Mr. Bechen says he's not willing to open the alley. And if Mr. Robidoux chooses to do that, that's his prerogative. And as the discussion went at the last meeting, it's true. He would have every right to do that. When you say he has no offers or nobody interested in it, I've expressly asked about it. I've approached him personally when this whole business started. And in addition, when we were first buying our home, which is located on 700 West 7th Avenue. It's a Queen Anne Victorian home on the corner of 7th and Minnesota. Everybody says it's a beautiful home. Well, now I'm going to have an industrial commercial structure behind my house. But I did approach Mr. Robidoux about it, and his comment was something to the effect of, well, let's wait and see what happens with the zoning of the property, because it was clear that he had a purchase agreement with Mr. Bechen pending approval or disapproval for this rezoning. I think the key issue here is, more importantly, is that while Mr. Bechen is a nice guy, and I will tell you, I have not met one person that has a negative thing to say about Mr. Bechen. And as I previously said, I have no animosity towards him whatsoever. It's about the type of business that he proposes to put there. And that said, I just lost my train of thought. That's what happens when you get older, I guess. Anyway, my point is that we don't believe that when you've got an entire neighborhood saying no to this, are you going to give preference to one individual? I understand his needs to make profits, and I applaud him for his success in his business. There's that picture that I sent around is actually pictures of a facility that is for sale, that he could put his business in, and it's just down the street. It's already zoned commercial. There's those 156 acres that I previously mentioned. So from our standpoint, it's like, why would you rezone a residential lot when there's a plethora of property, not just on the west of Highway 37, but around Mitchell, for him to have? He says it's expensive. $1.50 a square foot doesn't sound expensive to me, but I'm not in the commercial business though either, commercial real estate business, and I'm probably jumping back into repeating myself on stuff, Mr. Mayor, as you pointed out. Unless I've answered your question, or did you have further questions? Or?
Yep. So just to reiterate, you approached Mr. Robidoux after you found out that this piece of property was going to be possibly sold to Mr. Bechen?
Yes, sir. On September the 24th, Mr. Bechen came to my house.
Any reason why you haven't asked Mr. Robidoux to purchase this property from him before that? Because this has sort of been an empty lot for like 30 years.
Okay, maybe I misspoke. When we were purchasing our house in April of this year, we went through a real estate agent, and forgive me, I always butcher this man's name. Chuck? Yes. Anyway, forgive me, Chuck, if you're here. Anyway, or he sees it. But anyway, I asked him at that time, and I was told that it was not for sale, and it likely wouldn't be for sale. So I figured we would pursue it later and see if there would be an interest in it. And so we were still unpacking and trying to get moved into our home, because we moved in at the end of July. So then when Mr. Bechen approached me on September the 24th, after that I went over to see Mr. Robidoux at his business, Mitchell Concrete, There was a couple blocks away from our house. And at that time, I approached him and I expressed an interest in buying the property. And I told him, I said, I really don't want to see a commercial business over there behind my home, and I really have an interest in it. And my interest is just basically keeping it open. I think it's safer. I think it's more aesthetically pleasing. I really think it's safer for the kids. Mr. Betchen can improve the appearance of the building, but it's still not congruent with the neighborhood. And so, all right. Any other questions?
Others? Thank you.
Janelle Contreras. I live at the house by the proposed
You got the garage.
alley.
Yep.
Yes. And so I would like to state that, first of all, just because he wants to open it up, does that mean he automatically gets to open it up like you stated?
Justin can answer if he wants, but I believe the answer would be yes.
What?
I would believe the answer could be yes. We have no reason
So
to deny it. Unless Justin, you have
like
better
the houses on
clarification for
either
that.
side don't have a say in that matter?
It's
Public
currently
right-of-way.
designated as an alley. It's a public
Right.
right-of-way, so
Right.
you're built in a right-of-way, so all one person's got to do is say no.
Say they
you're gonna
want
move
it and there's no opposition, you can't oppose it and say, well, it would affect us and so we would like to not have it open?
Unless, Justin, you got some better,
Well, it's still a city decision in the end. We did basically grant an easement saying that you can keep it there until we say that you can't.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think the city's going to go of its own accord and reopen it. But if there's somebody asking, then that's certainly a possibility.
A possibility, but it doesn't mean it automatically will happen.
You have to ask the council that.
I did.
Well, it's a public right-of-way. I mean, if he asks it for access to his lot, I don't know how you would prevent him from having that.
Well, I'm just
And
curious
you
how
have-
that, I mean, that's
you have
not
the
the
right-
only access to his lot.
Yeah, but you have the rights to it until such a time as it's needed or the city wants to open it. So if somebody came and said, I want that as an access to my lot so I don't have to use the other roads, I don't know how we would say, no, you can't have it. I mean, you would certainly have an option to come up here and stand and argue against it.
Right. I mean, so,
you're doing now.
but the way it's been presented to me, it sounds like if he wants it open, it will be opened.
Well, there would have to be good circumstances not to open it.
Okay.
Your garage there is not a good circumstance. I mean, you're
Just the
you're
fact
granted,
that we wouldn't, the neighbors
you're
on either
granted-
side don't want it?
You're granted the use of that right now until such a time as we
I understand
we deem
that.
it's going to be open.
I understand that.
So,
But the way this discussion has been going, I understand it that he's saying if Mr. Robidoux would like it open, it would be open. But I don't believe Mr. Robidoux is a vindictive person like you make it sound like he would just do that because I believe he wants to sell his property. And if this doesn't get passed and Mr. Betchen is not allowed to buy it, somebody else will, and it'll still make him happy. Because he wants to sell the property, and if it's going to be bought, does he care who buys it? But the neighbors care what is put on it. And that's been shown.
and for the record, I'm not making Mr. Robidoux seem to be a bad person because I believe Mr. Robidoux is not, and I know he's not. My point of it is I'm saying that he has the right to ask to open
I know.
the alley up. So
I know,
like Mr. Robidoux's name.
I just believe I know how you're making it sound, to me anyway. Oh, and I'd also like to state for the record that the alleyway is not my only concern. Okay, that is not why I was here to oppose it and all that.
yeah, we
Okay,
understood that. We understood
repeated
that.
more than once.
Further questions from the council?
Stephanie, can you bring up the map that shows the zoning of it currently in that area?
No. It'd be the city zoning. I think we had it last time.
Is it that
City
second
zoning.
from the bottom?
Try the second from the bottom. Nope, you went down. There you go, right there. Try that one. Oh, that's not.
No, is it?
I think it was in that second ordinance because
yeah.
Oh,
it
right
was.
above it, zoning map.
Okay, there you go, perfect. Okay, so the lot that we're talking about right now is the 701 that you're circling. And right now, it shows on the map that it is an R2, is that correct? Okay. And there is currently a substation on that lot.
Right there where she's got the arrow.
Okay. This is where I'm going to need help, Neil. Is a substation a possible conditional use for R2?
I'd have to look at the code because it depends what it was at that time when they put the substation there. So I'd have to look. I would almost say it's a conditional.
I think it was probably a railroad track one time.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, this whole area, it's in 1924, it was zoned industrial with the railroad track going through.
Yeah.
59, it was still industrial. Somewhere between 59 and 75 or thereabouts, that's zoned R2. I don't know. We couldn't find out why.
Yeah,
we couldn't figure out why.
It's been R2 at least since the 70s. So, but yeah, the substation is on the two lots. Right? Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. Those are the two. And then the next two lots to the south is also part of this application. And then it's the first 4 lots on the Minnesota side. So it's not only just the 4, it's actually 6 lots. 4 on the one side, 2 on the other side, just as a reminder. The 2 to the right. So there's 2 there. There's two substation on the Montana, then 2 lots, and then all 4 lots on there. Correct. On that aerial, you could see the parcel numbers.
But without reviewing the code,
I don't want to say 100% without looking at the code. My guess is it would be a conditional.
I don't believe that it is.
But I could be wrong. Yep.
My guess is it's a pre-existing condition. It's been that way for
I'd have to pull up the
time, and if it was something that was being built,
we could pull it up if you want.
Wouldn't be able to go there.
I don't want to. Yeah, I know it's not a permitted use. I can tell you that. And then we did have a conversation with in the Planning Commission two meetings ago. Craig Ferguson had mentioned that there's no plan at this point for it to disappear, because we'd asked that specific question.
Or expand.
Or expand the substation.
And do we have an idea when that was put in? That was part of the conversation.
I think it was.
At least my time, it's been here.
I don't think it was there in the 70s.
Maybe somebody who's lived out there longer would know. It's been there at least since my time here. That's 20 years. So. Yeah, my guess is it probably was as part of the high school or the school, maybe then.
It wasn't over in the school first.
It wasn't?
No.
Okay.
The railroad was still there.
Yeah, the railroad.
So it's safe to say that it probably just got grandfathered in.
Or it depends what the code read at that time.
But if it was to go in today more than...
Oh, yeah, it couldn't go there now. No. If it disappears, it disappears. So.
This would be the 4 that you were looking at on the zoning map right
Correct.
here, and then these would be the 2.
Right.
Correct?
Correct.
This big square and that little square.
You can almost see where the old railroad track kind of meanders around there.
Well, I have to say that this has been an issue that I've labored over a great deal. Honestly, I have labored over this. But I think, Dave, I would love to see you, I want to see you succeed and find a place to put your business. But I think one of the reasons that we send these letters out is to give the neighborhood a chance to express their opinions. And I feel like overwhelmingly the people who are directly impacted by this building have made it respectfully and abundantly clear that they would rather not have this rezoned. And, you know, if that wasn't going to be a factor, then my question is, why do we send out the letters? And as a person who represents this part of town, I feel like it's my responsibility to give the people in that neighborhood a voice. So to that end, and once again, I'm sorry, Dave, but I am going to move to deny the rezoning.
Okay, we have a motion by Mrs. Charles. Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of second. Entertain another motion.
Can we tie into the abandoning the alley with the motion?
To vacate the alley?
Yes.
No, that'd have to be done separately.
That has to go through the planning commission and everybody.
And that would be something that's essentially entirely under the council's authority to do. So if that's something that the council wanted to do, basically you can do it of your own accord at a later date.
And I'll speak up here. I've heard all the testimony. I understand both sides. To me, knowing that the 8th Avenue corridor has been a industrial corridor since before I was born and before 1924. The fact that we have a R2 lot in the middle of a warehouse or a TWC district, to me, is more of an anomaly than a neighborhood protection. And with 3 metal sheds within, I'll call it less than 500 feet without measuring, just from looking at it. I understand the opposition, but I just don't believe the concerns of the neighbors related to that. The issue of the building down the street, the Lucid building, and what happens when that happens. That was a freight warehouse for many years, and the houses were built around it, knowing that there was a freight warehouse there. The bypass, as we call it today, didn't exist, and Sanborn was the bypass. And up to 20 trucks a day went down 7th Avenue to go to that freight depot to transfer freight from the Sioux Falls warehouse to here and then out. And I know that because I worked with the transportation manager of that depot, and I actually lived only 2 blocks away from there. So the standpoint that the neighborhood is not experienced or had warehouse or transportation type items over the years, it is to me very short-sighted. I understand their concern, and I guess I wouldn't want the traffic of all those trucks coming either, but the fact is the way it was zoned and the way the bypass was, Sanborn was the bypass, that's what happened. The railroad went through there, and all of those businesses built along the railroad. So knowing that, and I understand the concern, but I'm going to make the motion that we put the rezoning on second reading from R2 to TWC.
We have a motion by Mr. Rice. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Barrington. Further discussion?
Yeah, Dave, just out of curiosity, have you looked at any other properties that like the one that was brought forward that is available? Have you, I mean, are any of those are any of those something that you would be able to acquire at potentially the same price and possibly even less? Have you looked at other spots?
I have looked, and it's been, it's probably been a year and a half since I looked at the one down on East First, I believe it was. I don't know if Mitchell Christian used to be in that building down there, and that was way out of my ballpark. I did check actually into Lucid's building, and that was way out of my ballpark. And I even checked into trying to buy the land that is part of Lucid's, and they were unwilling at the time. They were unwilling to sell just the land off of that. So yes, I have looked at other buildings, and I've actually even inquired about some of those metal buildings across the street, and they weren't for sale. They wanted to keep them for themselves. So I have looked. I'm not saying that there isn't some more out there, but I guess this is where I'd really like to go.
Dave, I wasn't here last time, but I might have been answered already, but the size of your vehicles, can you explain that to me again, that will be in this area?
I have a pickup with a topper on it. I have a commercial van, just a cargo van. And for the most part, I buy 90% of my material, 95% of my material from the local supply house here at DSG. I would say on a given month, and not to say that it can't go up or it won't go up, but I might receive 4 delivery trucks, and that the one does bring a semi, and the other one is just a straight truck or whatever you want to call it. Sometimes they bring a van, sometimes they bring a straight truck, whatever. So not like a UPS truck or something like that, but that is, for the most part, all the more I get for deliveries. I'm not that big that I get that many, but like I said, not that I won't grow and get a few more down the road. But
okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
And what exactly is the motion at this point?
Motion
to approve on second reading.
Rezoning.
This is second reading.
Second reading. Did you have one more comment?
Yes, sir. Dwight Stadler again. I realize you're looking at the history of the property along that route on West 8th Avenue, Mr. Rice. I guess my comments is that continuing to make the same mistakes over again is not in the best interest of the city or the neighborhood. That property really, I think it was expressed in the Planning and Zoning Commission that it is an oddball piece of property. And from our perspective, it isn't just about what it does to the residents in the area, it's what it does to the children in the area. And I know Mr. Betchen has stated that his traffic is minimal. However, when you look at his drawings for his plans, it's quite an expansion from what he has now. He's got 5 parking spaces in front of the building, 8 parking spaces behind it. For somebody that doesn't expect much traffic, that seems like quite a few parking spaces. If they're going to be in and out and gone all day, then what's the need for those parking spaces? So there's a contradiction in what's said and what I'm seeing in the drawings. I look at the apartment complexes that are along West 8th Avenue. And again, yes, those are businesses to the corporations or businesses that own them, but to the people that live in them, they're their houses, and they have children there that go to the Mitchell School and around the neighborhood as well. So I would respectfully disagree with you that continuing to zone that as an industrial area would be the wrong thing to do. And as you've probably seen by the pictures that I circulated, it's a metal building right in the midst of other houses, and that's just, it's so far outlandish it doesn't even begin to match. And I would differ in that the picture of the facility that I took, it's only about 5 years old, and those houses were there before then. And that's respectfully disagreeing with
Actually,
you,
no,
sir.
that building has been there since I was in middle school, and those houses.
The metal building that I took a picture of? Okay. I was given misinformation.
Quite old, yeah.
I was given
There may have been an
misinformation.
addition to it, but the
There's
overall
the one-
metal building has been there for 40 or 50
I know the
years.
one right on West 8th Avenue has been there for a long time, but the one behind it that's on West 7th Avenue looks like it was new, and I was told that thing's only been there for about 5 years. So
They
I may
could have put
received-
an addition, but the overall building has been there for over probably 50 or 60.
Yeah, that one has, the main building, but that other one is, anyway, that's it.
Mr. Putnam, in a business, the city requires a certain number of parking spaces?
Yes,
does it
there's
not?
in our code, it's got it on there, and it's in the back of the code. There's a section on there, and it's got a listing of the various uses that what the parking places or that would be required, and he meets this. At least.
Is that why he has so many parking spaces?
No, he meet the minimum. I'll just put it that way.
All right.
But that's all. Our code just lays out the minimum. I mean, a person can have as many as they feel necessary, but he meets the required.
Further discussion? Okay. All those in favor, excuse me, all those in favor of the motion to rezone, signify by saying aye. Second reading to rezone, sorry. Ordinance 0-2018-13, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We need to do that roll call. Okay. Opposed? Okay. Now we go to the second, motion to adopt, okay?
Move to adopt.
Second. Motion by Mr. Barrington, second by Mr. Smith to adopt. Further discussion? All those in favor, roll call.
Barrington.
Aye.
Allen.
Aye.
Sharps.
No.
Smith.
Aye.
Sabers.
Aye.
Rice.
Aye.
Dosher. McCardle.
Aye.
Motion to adopt carries. Item 17, second reading of ordinance O-2018-14, an ordinance that changes the zoning district classification of the real property legally described as Block 52, Block 53, Lots 6 through 10, Block 54, Capital Addition, City of Mitchell, Davidson County, South Dakota, from TWC, Transportation Warehouse and Commercial, to R4, High Density Residential, excluding Lots B through Y, CY, located in the southeast quarter of Section 16, Township 103 North, Range 60 West, platted various, and Lot 5, Block 52, Capital Addition, City of Mitchell, Davidson County, South Dakota.
I would just want to point out that what the mayor just read, that excluding those three parcels that we took out from that you had excluded from the last time. That's why the legal description is a little bit different from the first reading for this one. It's minus those three parcels that the owners had preferred to stay. Just to bring him back up to speed. Oh, go ahead. It's those three on the red, on there, right there. Yep, right there. Okay. Yep. Basically it's that shed that we were just talking about, and a vacant lot on the other side that are actually owned by Mr. Robidoux or Mitchell Concrete. I guess can't remember which one it's owned, but. Yep.
Yes, those were meant. Right.
Right. They're just basically leaving them as.
He wants to leave where the shed is.
And then that's all the lots right there.
And the houses along 9th want to be R4 because they can't get a loan in TWC.
Right.
Move to place on second reading. Second.
Motion by Mr. Allen, second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this one? All those in favor of the motion, second reading, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Motion to adopt ordinance O-2018-14. So moved. Second. Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mrs. Charks. Discussion? I'm sorry. Motion by Mr. Rice. You both sound alike, huh? Second by Mrs. Charks, right? Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address it? Roll call, please.
Sharps.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Sabers.
Aye.
Rice. Dosher. McCardle.
Aye.
Barrington. Allen.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 19, second reading of ordinance O-2018-15, supplemental appropriations.
There haven't been any changes since we reviewed this at the last meeting. These are all coming from reserve cash that's designated for that specific purpose. So Veterans Park would come out of the reserve funds for that. It was carryover from the, it's not grand opening, the dedication ceremony that we had for the park in 2018. The rest is for bond payments that became, we didn't have the dollar amount when the budget was passed, and then the last one is just expenses for the Clockworks TIF on some of the design expense. So this will not affect your structurally balanced budget because it's coming out of a designated fund for those specific purposes.
Motion by Mr. Barron.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address it? All those in favor of the motion, second reading, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Motion to adopt ordinance O 2018-15.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Stark, second by Mr. Allen. Discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? Roll call, please.
Sabers.
Aye.
Rice.
Aye.
Dosher. McCardle.
Aye.
Barrington.
Aye.
Allen.
Aye.
Charts.
Aye.
Smith.
Motion carries. Action on Resolution R 2018-62, a resolution setting up fees and charges.
The ambulance fees we're proposing here, some of them are existing, they just didn't get on a past resolution. But the ALS2 is, I'm looking for like a $100 increase. Basic life support emergency would go from $600 to $750, and then the loaded miles charge would go from 15 to 18, and this is getting more in line with a few of the other cities around the state. And then the other rates on there is just setting a fee for our training room that we have at Public Safety Building, so that when private enterprise or private business would use it, there would actually be a set fee that we don't have. We're one of the few city buildings, I guess, that do not have a set fee.
Lyndon, and I saw this and asked Stephanie about some of the background, and I know you and I and Susan and the mayor and Marius had a discussion earlier in the year about the EMS and the losses that we're seeing, anywhere from 300,000 to 700,000, depending on how you say you want to allocate the labor. And I know this is in response to that, and I believe it's correct. The other half of this is the collections part of how we're doing at collecting for these fees. But I would like to table this for 2 weeks and see if we can look and put some numbers together to see what type of impact this would have on the amount that we bill as compared to last year, the year before, and also if we can look at what our cost structure is for whether it's BLS or ALS2. I don't have any issue with these numbers, I don't think, but I would like to make it part of a bigger picture going forward of how we look at our EMS service. And I think maybe we can get that done in a couple of weeks. Obviously, we can report back on that. If we don't have it, we can still approve this in the second. I'd like to approve it in the first meeting of December, but if not, we could approve it in the second meeting just so that we have that in place going into next year. Yeah, I'll make that a motion that we table that till the next meeting.
Second. Second by Mr. Smith. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this one? Okay. All those in favor of the motion to table for 2 weeks signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 22, authorize letter of commitment for 5-year Davidson County Hazard Mitigation Plan update.
Mr. Mayor and Council, this is authorization for the staff to participate with the Davidson County hazard mitigation plan. There's no cost to the city, and representatives from Public Works and Public Safety, as well as any members from the city council and mayor, are welcome to participate.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Allen, second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 23, decision on location for the Corn Palace Festival. I will point out, or maybe Mr. Schmidt wants to, that we had a discussion today with a couple of the people on the north end of this and modified that layout slightly to accommodate their concerns. You want to further explain, Mr. Schmidt?
Just after speaking with both Graham Goodyear and TMA, we kind of alleviated the east half of what we consider the TMA parking lot, allowed them parking for their business during business hours, and then it would open up for parking Corn Palace Festival post 5 or 6 p.m. We also vacated the north 15 feet maybe of the city lot next to the Pepsi Theater, so they have access to their loading dock, and it would give access as well to Graham Goodyear to be able to pull in and out if they were to use that route into the back of their business as well.
So
just
basically
where,
the main changes in that map from the last time were all right here.
and then there was a request to obviously barricade the top third of the Pepsi Theater parking lot, the front of Graham Goodyear, and then obviously around the TMA parking lot where all the yellow lines are at. Just so there's no crossover of people potentially climbing through tires, that kind of stuff. So, yep.
Out of the area.
Yep.
Scott, what do you see going in behind the area community theater building?
Well, so from what I can explain, the conversations I've had with Gold Star is we would potentially try to create a kids ride area on the north half of City Hall parking lot, 7th Street, as well as the Pepsi Theater, and kind of keep the kids area consolidated into that part of Corn Palace Festival, and then from 7th Street north up into the TMA, and then the Slumberland parking lot would be our bigger kid rides, I guess you'd say, or bigger adult rides. I don't know the correct terminology for that, but big kids, those ones I go on. So
Susan, that's where your ride's going to go.
Yep. So potentially we'd like to at least have the ability to map it out for promotional materials and such moving forward. I'm not sure if anybody has any questions, but I'll try not to repeat anything that we spoke about a month ago.
Scott, I was going to ask you, obviously we haven't made the decision here, but just want to understand if we do go north with working with the businesses that you have, especially today, and we've taken some square footage off of the original map that we at least looked at. Now, is that going to reduce the number of rides, do you think, that we were initially looking at? Because obviously that was the intent of this.
I have not talked to the Featherstones from Gold Star yet today, as we remapped this early afternoon. I was not able to get a hold of them.
I think that would
originally they haven't,
to know, because I sit on the Corn Palace Entertainment Committee with Scott, Stephanie, and as we're discussing, the major reason why we're actually looking at this is the fact that we continue to lose the money that we are receiving from the Midway, and we've in the past have had as high as 53 or 54, whatever the number is, substantially less than what we're receiving today. But the point I'm making is if we continue to decrease without taking a look or changing something at some point, that really, the amount that we bring in on the midway helps supplement all the other things we do throughout that week, including bringing in entertainment and keeping it at somewhat of a reduced amount or a reasonable amount that people can come to the Corn Palace and see the show. So the point I'm making is I think the Corn Palace Events Committee didn't want to wait till this thing got to a drastic situation and wanted to address it now to see what we can do. And so, again, I don't know what way everybody's thinking of going, but if we are going to be reducing, again, the number of rides, I think we really need to take a good look at this. And I don't know, maybe the possibility of the parking lot just to the west of Rotary Park, if we need to, we can maybe pick that up. I know it's not going to be totally contiguous, but at least it's some square footage that is within the area. So I would make that as a suggestion, but I really would like to see what Gold Star, what their impression is now that we've got a new map.
Scott, on the parking lot, the old disco, you got the east half of that along Kimball Street is where they have their trailer houses or
correct
homes that they live there. My complaint that I have a lot of people don't care either direction, but where's the parking going to be? Could you find a different home for that? I know they want to be next to the carnival, but this would open up close to maybe 70 parking spots. That's close to the Corn Palace, which would help the shows.
Yep. We've looked up and down without closing off any other parking lot, in a walking proximity. We don't have a lot of opportunities other than trying to consolidate how or where they set up their campers. We typically give them the entire east half. We can attempt to give them a quarter of the parking lot, move their campers closer together. But in regards to any other parking lot that's close, I think we'll be taking up.
They wouldn't want to go to the campground, would they?
Probably not.
I was just looking for some business.
Scott, we had a brief discussion about the potential of pushing the date to another time. Did you have a chance to visit with Gold Star?
I did, and I actually have that list. Bear with me here, please. I have done some research. July 13th to the 15th, they're busy. 18th to the 22nd, 24th to the 29th, July 25th to the 29th, July 30th, 31st to August 5th. Let's see here. Then they go August 8th to the 12th, August 7th to the 12th, 2 different spots. Owatonna, Minnesota, August 14th to the 19th. Then Corn Palace Festival, then State Fair, then down to Spencer, Iowa, September 8th to the 16th, and then they head down south to Missouri and Louisiana. So with Gold Star, I believe from what I understood, once I started digging deeper, this was the week that we had open, as well as some of the history that I found looking back at different data. We've been through 3 other companies from what I understand prior to Gold Star, and speaking with different people, at least one, if not 2 of them, had actually been escorted out after their first year. Contracts have been torn up by the police. They've been escorted out. So I think we're with the quality vendor that provides quality service, and I think we've got an ethical obligation to provide a quality character service to our citizens. But so I think we're with the right vendor. It's just allowing them to set up as they see fit. They do this for a living, and they know how to make money and make money for themselves as well as for the city. So I think that's the most important aspect, is allowing them to do their job, to me.
There is something in their contract that says they will give us a layout, though, is there?
Correct. We've never been able to hold them accountable to that. Their contract does say they're supposed to give you a layout 2 weeks prior. In the 3 years that I've been here, they've never set up and not moved a ride because of constructive criticisms. So
their layouts really haven't been valid because
right.
of them having to move things around on
so
Main Street previous.
So getting an actual layout, even when we give them square footage, they've never been able to give us an estimate. They give us an estimate on the number of rides that are coming in, but with that consistently changing every single year through different businesses asking to move rides that are blocking their business, etc. That's how we came to where we're at right now.
And I think therein lies part of the problem too, is regardless of where we go, north or south, we got to adhere to the contract. And as such that, and I've talked to the mayor about this too, is we have to feel comfortable what's best for the carnival. And yes, we do have to look out for the business people, but it's just a handful of days. I do understand that. And you may not agree with exactly the way the layout is, but we have to somehow maximize the amount that we're receiving from the Midway. And you can kind of tell with Scott is why would they give us a layout when we're setting up rides and 6 hours later they're tearing them down. So regardless of where we go north and south, I really think that we need to work with Gold Star and get an exact layout of what the carnival is going to look like. And then what we do is we need to give and share that with the public and the business owners. They may agree or disagree with what happens to be in front of them, but I don't think we should be changing. But at least they'll know ahead of time. And again, they may not like it, but at least we'll communicate to them exactly what's going to be in front of their business. And I honestly think that should be completed months prior to, not 2 weeks. I know we can't change the contract, but I would certainly think that they would be able to give that to us prior.
Right now we can because this is new.
Okay.
One of the things that we've also discussed is the fact that we'll have the Sanborn construction going on. And there's been some discussion about potentially just extending this current contract and moving it down north because of the need to have it north so that we have that's some way for people to travel north to south. And you have Sanborn blocked off. So potentially extending the current contract, give us another year and move it north. And then it would kind of give us a test drive before we settle into another 3 or 5 year contract.
That was discussed at the Mitchell Main Street.
Has that been discussed with Gold Star?
The additional 1 year contract?
Yeah.
No, it has not. I was waiting for a decision here. They do have the original maps from our meeting, I believe a month ago. Since then, I basically told them it was tabled and I'd get back to them after this meeting.
The advantage of doing the 1 year thing would let us try it north once. It keeps Main Street open as kind of a main corridor, north to south, while Sanborn is being worked on. Up to the council.
Scott, what's going in on the corner where they had rides on 5th Street there? You know, where they have the
On 5th and Main parking lot?
Yeah, the parking lot. Is that going to
Yep.
be rides again?
That would be more or less a freedom stage is what we're planning on, or possibly a beer garden, depending on how we set
They've had
everything
rides
up.
there in the past, though, haven't they?
Yep, that was actually added. As far as I know, it had never been used for rides. I have no idea, to be honest with you. But the first year that I was here was when 2nd Street and 3rd Street were both blocked off. So trying to meet the quota for a couple extra rides, we gave them the 5th and Main parking lot.
Looks to me like there's a lot of, they're gaining a lot of space with Slumberland parking lot, DMA parking. They're for bigger rides they should have.
And how it's traditionally set up right now is just up and down Main Street, but we did take off the east 12 or 13 feet of Main Street with the fire lane, so that has to be taken into consideration that, even if it were to remain the exact same space, workable space is going to be different in allowing them to set up how they want to. So I don't know if I answered your question, but basically from 5th to 7th, festival would stay the same with our our specialty vendors and our food vendors, and then the rides would essentially go from 7th north to Slumberland TMA parking lot.
What about in the grass area there? Is that going to be music stuff again, or
either music
Glass
or
area?
different activities that we're trying to figure out with our events and entertainment board.
Okay.
There's a possibility that we do move a few vendors in there, but we're just trying to figure out the best use of that space, as we've had music and bean bags and blow-up houses, so figure out the best use.
You know, Mitchell Main Street and Beyond has told the affected business owners now twice, because I requested that they send out a second survey just in case people had had a chance or had a change of heart since our last vote. Essentially, it's pretty much a dead heat, depending on how you look at it. At this point, the most recent survey has 17 people approving of moving it north, 15 votes disapproving, 4 votes that have no preference either way. I think the advantage of extending this current contract and moving it north for 1 year gives everybody, the people in favor and the people against, a chance to kind of test drive what this is going to be like. And I think that there's a certain amount of uncertainty that comes with never having experienced it and not being able to visualize what that will look like or how it will affect them one way or the other. So my vote would be, and my opinion is, that if there is a way for us to extend the current contract for 1 year to allow us to move it north in light of the construction on Sanborn, and then go on and do another 3 or 5 year contract, whatever it ends up being after that, after this.
I got a question on the voting part. Do you have to be a member of Main Street and Beyond, or do they do every business from one point to the other?
You know what, they did, I believe, only do survey the member businesses, but I could be wrong. I'm trying to remember. I have the list of businesses, but I have the list of businesses that were surveyed. Let me just look, and I'll tell you just real quick. I can tell you because I know a few that.
Because that's probably not a fair survey if they don't hit everybody up and down Main Street, is what I'm trying to get at.
Well, other than we've been talking about a month, so they
Yeah.
could have contacted Bob or any of
Right.
us if they do have an opinion one way or the other. But I know what you're coming from.
Yeah.
I believe that they surveyed the businesses who are members. But just give me 1 second, because I want to see. I would say that's yes, because I can see there are a couple of businesses that I can think of who are not members, and they're not on this list.
While you're looking that up, is there anybody in the audience that wants to come on up, please? That'll give you some time. Oh, you got it?
I'm Jason Bates. I've been in business on Main Street longer than just about everybody on Main Street. And I've worked firsthand with every carnival you've ever had, and Gold Star is by far the best one you've ever had. Mike Featherstone is a very good friend of mine. And but the survey was not done to me. It was not asked to me. The same thing was done a few years ago. They slipped a survey through without asking every business on Main Street, and we had to fight it, and we came back and we won. Corn Pals Week is the busiest week of the entire year for me. If I told you the amount of money that you're going to cost me, you'd be shocked that week. I do a month's worth of business that week, not only to the town of Mitchell, but Mike's employees come there all the time. I've created a safe place for them to come and not be harassed by the town. They come in, they use the bathroom, they get water from me through my outside spigot. I think moving it is a mistake. I think if you want to make it bigger, why not go towards the depot? You got big parking lots down there. Like I said, I've been in business longer than pretty much everybody. 40 years I've seen every company you've brought, and I've noticed the last few years, and I know that the city isn't intentionally doing this, but the decisions that they're making are hurting from 1st to 5th Street. I've noticed businesses suffering and going down, and you just lost another one, the American Legion, unfortunately. And I talked to the manager, and she said ever since they started doing the Thursday things and the Friday things, it's pulled business away from 1st to 5th Street. And if you want more open businesses, more empty buildings on our end of Main Street, then keep doing what you're doing. But pulling Corn Palace Week down that way, if you're not between 5th and 7th Street, you're struggling. And I'm telling you, this is going to hurt me enormously. September's the slowest month of the year for me, and Corn Palace Week kind of pushes me through to October to where we get busy again. Not only that, if you're filling up your parking lots with these other rides, when you could just expand and go down towards the depot, you're taking your parking spots away from your entertainment, when you have your concerts and things like that. And also, why is it that the last couple of years, one of my biggest competitors is the city of Mitchell, having bands and selling beer and doing things outside to pull business away from my end of Main Street? I mean, not to be rude, but are you going to start selling sportswear and run Harv's out of business? I mean, it's the things you guys are doing are really affecting my end of Main Street.
And I'm not trying to debate you, Jason, but one of the things, we have, like I said, this is about as divided a topic and issue as you can possibly have, and for every person who agrees with you, there's someone who disagrees with you. So, but what I would like to say is, there are opportunities in all of those events for people like you to go and market yourselves and say, come down to Longhorn and we're doing 2 for 1 or whatever, and market yourselves. I mean, we're getting the people downtown, and then you need to, capitalize on that.
But you're pulling them away from me. I've noticed a decrease in business since you've done this. And, not to mention, I could confidently argue that any retail business that is complaining that an increase of traffic that hurts your business, I find that very hard to believe, when honestly probably a more realistic reason is that most people only have so much money. So if you could move Corn Palace Week out to Walmart, and the week of Corn Palace Week, are they going to go buy a pair of shoes, or are they going to save this check for their, kids for rides and for food and games and stuff? Retail is a luxury, and when you're on a fixed budget like a majority of people are, that's the week you're not going to probably go buy new shoes or do something. You're going to save this check for your kids. And it'd be pretty hard for you to argue that with me. I mean, most people just have so much money and that's all they have. So I'm
apparently changing the date isn't an option, but I totally agree with you. I think that is a valid issue.
I've talked firsthand with Mike. I fly him home every year. I've stayed at his house, and the reason that the date does not work is because, believe it or not, they don't make any money off Corn Palace Week. This one pays for all their bills, services their trucks. Dale's A1 is a huge customer. They service all their vehicles. This kind of gets them to the state fair where they make money on the state fair. So the reason that they can't move it is because it's a transition from here to the state fair. And I've talked to Mike firsthand, and I know Mike does not want to move it. Of course, he's sticking up for me though, and I think his dad feels a little differently. But why can't you go the other way and leave the Corn Palace for
I think there's an answer to that, Jason. I think that one of the reasons was because
he didn't
Mike
want to have a live road between his rides for liability issues. We asked him about that.
Well, you used to do it. You used to have the bungee jump right there.
I know. I said this. I said the same thing, and that was the reason was because they didn't.
The jump was on the main north side of First.
No, it wasn't. It was right in the middle of the street. Because the zipper was right in front of the Longhorn.
It was in the middle of the street that we didn't have a road open there. So
that's true. You didn't. It was closed.
But here, if we move him down, you'll have First Street open because we have to keep 2 streets open.
Sure.
He does not correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but in the discussions with him, he did not want to have a live street.
Correct. And just for clarification, Jason, I'm assuming Mike Jr.
Yeah.
So when I'm referencing Mike Featherstone, it's Mike Sr.
The dad.
So, yeah.
The dad, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like I said, though, I've kind of been a pit stop for all their employees, and it's, they come in and eat, and they come in and rest, and they use, my bathrooms and my water, and it's a safe place for them to go where they don't get harassed. And not to mention the city as well, the town. So I just, the amount of business that this is going to cost me, and I'm sure Dr. Lucky's and the VFW, and it would have cost the American Legion. Unfortunately, they're closed. But I'm just letting you know that on my end of Main Street, the decisions that you guys keep making are hurting my end of Main Street. And the American Legion can be the first one to agree with me, because they're no longer in business. So I just think raising our taxes and taking business away from them is a recipe for more businesses going out of business. So I think that should be thought of before they, when you're making decisions like this. Because Main Street is not 5th to 7th Street. Main Street is Main Street.
So Jason, you do know that there are a lot of businesses that actually close their doors because that week is so poor for them. So we have on as much as you benefit from the festival being down there, we have other businesses who adamantly feel like they might as well not even be in business that week because they have no business. So I just, I just have to tell you, this is as divided an issue as there possibly could be.
I understand, but as I said before, are you sure that it's not a retail issue when people only have so much money, or is it, because I can't understand how an increase of traffic could hurt any business.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else wish to address this?
Hello, Tim Goldhammer, part of Area Community Theater. As I said last time I was here, the board was only concerned about that strip being open, so because that's been changed, I don't think we would have any problem, and we'll probably open our doors to people to use our lobby and try and sell some pop, and so we'll see what happens, but that's kind of where we were at, so thank you for making that adjustment in your plans.
Anybody else wish to address this issue?
We need to keep in mind that the reason for this consideration was because of the declining revenue. As much as anything, that's what initiated it. And Scott, maybe you can refresh our memory what it was 3 years ago or 4 years ago and last year.
In regards to the revenue going down, my first year here, we made just under $48,000. It was $47,943.90. And 2018, we made $42,733.56. But significant drop from 2009, where we were close to 53,000. So, based on a percentage of sales that Gold Star has, it's dropped close to $11,000. And I think there's different things that we've talked about, allowing Gold Star to set up as they see fit. Larger, bigger rides, but you can see the trend of revenues going down. And just to touch base, we have heard a lot of complaints about timing of the year. We do overlap for the next couple of years with Dakota Fest. It's always the first football game for DWU, first football game for Mitchell High School, and local football. So moving it later in the year, we're still going to run into that on Fridays and Saturdays. And moving earlier in the year, we'd have to have a discussion with the chamber in regards to the gift shop inside the palace. So it seems to be a good fit as far as Gold Star's traveling through here. I don't think we need to look at that, but it's kind of where we're at.
Question for Kyle on jitters. Do you know what that space is going to look like after the building is down? And will that, regardless if we go stay where we're at south or if we go north, it's going to be in the area. So is that space possibly available for us to use too, or is that going to be kind of quarantined?
It's supposed to be grass.
Right now it is grass. It's scheduled to be
It's
grass.
scheduled to be grass.
Yes, sir.
That's going to be part of that discussion that council gave me direction on for the future expansion. And I said that we would include looking at that space, the plaza, and other opportunities when we start that conversation.
So we may want to throw that in the mix of maybe just having it gravel if we want to utilize that space. It's not a huge area, but yet.
In the specifications to be brought back to seated, I believe, yeah.
Okay. But you can pick up, all the way along the old Northwestern building, if in fact we're able to utilize. But just another thing to throw in the mix that we can think about.
And then the other thing that I should point out, I know we talked about this previously, but sorry, my squares go weird when I zoom out. We were only showing half of this lot, but remember Slumberland said we could potentially have up to 3/4 of the lot depending on who their future tenant is. They just didn't want to commit to that until they knew who that tenant would be.
So the other thing I was going to bring up, as we were discussing, right now, if we end up moving it, we've got Gold Star that's taking the majority of, or at least half of the disco lot because it's somewhat out of the way. So if we reclaim that area and move them to potentially to a parking lot that's on the southern part of Main Street, behind Harv's or wherever. I mean, they're going to be about the same distance. So.
You may want to look at that parking lot right behind the American Legion, the First and Raleigh.
Yeah.
And then also the one by the depot. The one by the depot.
Oh, sure.
And you maybe share both of them and still be close to the downtown bars.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is parking is going to be more of a premium at Disco if we go north. So then right now they are kind of somewhat out of the way, a few blocks away from getting on where their rides are at. But maybe there's a way or an opportunity to work with them and switch that around.
We try to bring power into those lots, the 50 amp stuff that we brought into the Disco lot.
Seems like that would be a way. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Jeff and Scott, I know your committee definitely discussed it, but anyway, I got brought up here just a little bit ago. Obviously, with the shows going on and us losing all these additional parking lots, I mean, there's got to be concern of all the additional parking that we're going to lose in that area, because we all know when we have a Corn Belt show going on, obviously behind the Pepsi Cola Theater gets filled, the TMA parking lot gets filled, your Core Trust Bank, I'm going to call it, parking lot gets filled in front. Behind you have a little parking lot gets filled. Obviously, we know Slumberland parking lot gets filled with cars. I'm just voicing my concern. I'm just worried about what people are going to think, that I'm going to go to a show and now you have to park literally at 4 or 5 blocks away compared to 1 block away. I mean, I know we gain something over here, but my other thing is I think we lose something, and that might be our attendance at our shows, right, because something's got to give her a little, because some people aren't going to walk 4 or 5. They're just not going to.
Right. And in reality, they're doing it now, like you said. And so we would basically we talked about it'd be flip-flop. So majority of the people would probably park on the south side and the parking lots that are on the south, and then head up Main Street.
I will add that the Gold Star box office is down on 3rd and Main. So there's a lot of people that park in Slumberland and the Disco Seeds lot and walk from there all the way down to 3rd just to get their wristband or tickets. Now that's not in regards to the Corn Palace show, but in regards to the ride tickets and that kind of stuff. So,
My concern would only be just the nighttime shows. I mean, I know kids and young families are going to park how far away to walk, but just at nighttime, is somebody going to start deciding, hey, I'm not going to go because I got to really park 5 blocks away to go see.
I will add that
Gilchrist boys. Just throwing something out.
I will add the northwestern parking lot that we just took over, barring approval through, I'm assuming PD, our street we would move that all to handicap parking, just because we're eliminating a lot of that in the North City Hall parking lot. So we would have access, if that makes sense.
Because there wasn't really a whole lot of parking available on City Hall lot because we marked off
Right.
a bunch, and then
Yep.
basically that western side is all ADA or veterans parking.
Yep. So I mean, we can potentially open up the northwestern lot. I would prefer to have 10, 12, 15 handicap parking spots at least, though, because we're eliminating so many of them close to the Corn Palace. So.
Forgot to mention too on the committee, they voted in favor of giving it a try and moving it. The 1 year didn't come up at that point in time at our committee, but they didn't put the number of years. But I think Susan might have a good suggestion of maybe just give it a test run. If we're going to do it, we'll just commit to 1 year, and then bring everybody back together and if that's something we want to consider. And of course, we do know, we talked about that Sanborn will be closed from April to October next year. And but we're going to be opening, as we talked before, we're going to get the first street by the viaduct opened up the first, or the quickest. That'll be phase one.
Yep.
That's phase one. So then there still would be access kind of north and south where you can go down Sanborn over the viaduct, turn and get on Main Street and be able to come down. So that was brought into consideration too. The other thing we talked about is, regardless if you're in favor or not, but there has been some discussion with redoing Main Street with doing different architecture. And if that's the case, there's the likelihood, the bump outs potentially. And there is the likelihood that if we ever do follow through with that, because we're doing we did phase one last year of Sanborn, we're going to do phase two, and then phase three the following year is the plan. Now councils can change this, but there's already in place with Mitchell Main Street and beyond presenting the Main Street and doing some different things. And if that is the case, Main Street more than likely will be closed during Corn Palace week. So if that is the case, then where would you take it? Well, if we do this, at least we have a test run to say this works or this does not work. So just another thing to throw into the mix that we discussed.
Are you looking for a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
I will make a motion that we attempt, or at least negotiate with Gold Star to extend the current contract for 1 year and move the Corn Palace Festival to the north for 1 year, and then hopefully decide at that point what we want to do for the next contract cycle. Did that sound like a motion?
A motion by Mrs. Charles to move it to the north for 1 year, extending the current contract, and do the test run, and then see what we want to do with a new contract following.
My question is, if they would prefer not to do one, can we do 3 or 5 and build this stipulation into the next contract? If that makes sense.
They decide they don't want to do it.
If they don't want to do a 1 year contract.
Right.
I don't think we're asking for a new 1 year contract. I think the first conversation would be extending the existing contract for a year. And if they say no to that, then we're going to have to look at a whole new contract.
What I'm saying is, if we extend it to a 3 or a 5 year contract, can we put this stipulation in that next contract? In year 1 of our next contract, we will be moving north. Year 2 will be based on council's decision.
That's a good thought, because if we're only doing a 1 year someone else might give them a 5 or 10 year.
Right.
So we know the Corn Palace with Gold Star is going somewhere. So that is a good thought.
And then you may want to.
But with the stipulation is, in 2019, this is where it's going to be, and then we need to decide after that where we'd like to locate it.
And
Justin,
then,
do you see any issues with that?
I think you also need to make sure that you include there that if it's going to be moved back on to South Main Street, that we have a contractual obligation to leave the rides where they are approved on the map, so that Gold Star can count on knowing that we're not going to make a move.
Right. Okay.
Assuming that Gold Star is agreeable to those, I think those are all doable.
Yeah, even 5 years. As long as we stipulate next year's north, and we'll decide after.
I'll amend my motion to that.
Sorry.
As stated.
Okay, we have an amended motion by Mrs. Charks and a second by Mr. Smith. Further discussion? Further discussion from the audience? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? Motion.
No.
One. Mr. Allen?
No.
Roll call that, please.
Dosher. McCardle. Barrington.
No.
Allen. Charts. Smith.
Aye.
Sabers. Rice. 4-4 vote.
I vote aye. I'm in favor of it. Well, and again, let everybody keep in mind it's a 1-year trial, so I hope it works. But I just want the Corn Palace Festival to work because I think it's a great celebration and we got a lot of history and we bring the community together and we'll see what Gold Star, what we can work out with them and hopefully improve it. And in the end, we might be here next year saying, let's move it back. So everybody just take note and visit with people and see what they think and believe. And we'll roll it back through the committee and come up with a recommendation again next year. Yeah. And I think it's a no-brainer for next year because of the Sanborn construction. We move it up even to the north side. So I think that's what we need to do to keep Main Street open as a main thoroughfare more or less while the construction is going on. And then we'll see what happens. We can address whatever we need to do the following year. Okay, item 24. Mr. Knipling, you've been very patient out there. James River Water Development District is going to give us a little discussion on the South Central Watershed and what they have in the plans and whatnot. I should point out Mr. Bartell is in the audience as well.
Good evening. Thanks for letting South Central come meet with this council tonight to begin our joint journey of tackling the water impairments on the Fire Steel Creek. My name is Rocky Knipling. I'm a watershed coordinator for the South Central group. I'm joined here tonight by the other 2 watershed coordinators, Shane Duranlo and Matt Cavanagh, and Dave Bartles, the manager of the James River Water Development District, is here also, and they are our sponsors for this project. I would like to commend this group for choosing the conservation option when obtaining your SRF loan recently. One of the biggest battles we have in the water quality or conservation worlds is keeping enough funds around to finish a project to make quality improvements in the water. So we do commend you for taking this on. I want to state up front that the SRF dollars that are generated by this will only be spent in Fire Steel. There's no administration fees against it. Every nickel will be put on as practices on the ground. In the South Central, we have an annual allotment for what our annual budget is, and there's money earmarked in that budget to be spent in Fire Steel, and we plan on doing that. this money won't offset any of our funds. And we will help spend money in here to leverage these SRF dollars to go a little farther. And James River Water Development, same way, they have their own funding sources and they offer programs, and they will continue to do that in this program. Well, let's spend a few minutes, give our thoughts of where the watershed sits right now, where attention is needed. I'll allow some time at the end to answer questions, and I'm sure there will be some. To me, the logical place to start is the water samples themselves that we pull every year. They'll give us a snapshot of what the current situation is in the Firesteel watershed. Our group pulled the samples in all of our watershed this year, and that included Firesteel. We set our sampling regime up to be honest and random as possible. We picked a day on the calendar, which was a Thursday, and every 3 weeks we sampled the 5 sites shown here on that Thursday. That way we weren't chasing the bluebird good days or following storm events. So it was fairly random. And these samples were pulled on the water recreation season from May 1st to September 15th. So roughly we have 7 different samples from each one of these 5 sites. The map here shows where they are. This is all in Davison County. The black line on the left is the Aurora-Davison line. The top sample site is the purple is on the main stem of the Firesteel Creek. The green is on the West Fork. The blue sample site we just started this year. On the next one down, the orange one, we've been getting spikes in the middle of the season, and we were trying to narrow down where these impairments were coming from. And then the other sample site is about 2 miles up from the tail of Lake Mitchell. Here's the first set of water samples. We're going to show you a comparison 5-year window. I'll do it on the TSS, the total suspended solids, and E. coli both. This is a compilation of 2013, 2014 samples to give a solid base so we can represent what the trend has been in Firesteel. One thing to note with Firesteel, it's completely backwards from any other watershed we sample. Notice the red box, the one closest to Mitchell, Lake Mitchell, is the best water site we got. Normally that's the worst one. It builds the other way. You will find from all the years of water sampling on Firesteel, it's that way. It's good on the top end, good on the bottom end, and it's usually the worst samples are in the middle sites. The red line on the top is the TMDL standard for TSS. It's 158 milligrams per liter, and this would be for sediment. 95% of the water samples are in the colored bars. The other 5% is represented by the line, the whisker going up above the colored blocks. As you can see, we had some impairments yet in 2013-14, mainly on the upper reaches. Here's this current site from this year and 2017, both are combined in here. The biggest difference you'll see here is these bars have shortened up. That means there's no variability to speak of in the water samples, whether it was in 2018, we were extremely wet from the middle of June to the middle of July, and the water samples were the same as they were later in the fall or earlier in the spring. So it's a sign that we have more of a stable watershed going out there for the TSS. The buffers in place on the farming practices are working. It looks like we're getting more of a straight line, which is good. But still, the one closest to Lake Mitchell is the best. Here's looking at the E. coli for 2013 and 14. Back to, it's pretty good on both ends, and the middle is where the problem is. Just an indication that there's probably more cattle drinking in the water than what probably needs to be. These are from the current year. Like I said, when it was wet in June and July, the ground was saturated. We got heavy rains. Probably the areas where the ranchers and farmers were calving their cows, maybe winter feeding. We had some overland flooding go through and wash some of the manure down into fire steel. One possibility, but we still think that this is the area we need to work on more, is excluding some livestock from grazing or drinking out of the fire steel itself. Probably more so.
The orange here, how many miles from the beginning of Lake Mitchell is that west?
It's red is 2 miles, and it's 13 miles to the purple site. So it's probably 8.
8 miles? Okay.
Yeah.
It's on the other side of Bass River.
And what's odd about that set of samples is the blue one and the orange one are only a mile apart, and look at the difference in. So that's what our main focus is planned on being for this upcoming year, is to go in this lower stretch. We're just going to work from the Davison line to Lake Mitchell, and we're going to meet as many of these producers as we can and try to get as many livestock off the creek as we can and see what the water samples show as the summer goes on. So that's what our plan is, and you guys can sure add any input you want to. I mean, we're partners in this deal. Like,
You say you got livestock. I got a quarter of that, and there's no water on it. The only water I got is the fire still. Now you're gonna just ask them, to help this out. Would you help build them a dam with the change of the water as well to get
no,
the source
we
of
could.
water? Or how would you do that?
We would probably do pipelines and tanks.
Okay, so there is an option.
And there is that option. That's probably where most of the money's going to go. If it works for the producer, we'll try to do total livestock exclusion, fence both sides of the creek off. Sometimes it don't work. We can do some cross fencing and limit the days they're on fire steel from 100 to maybe 30. So it's not a win-win situation, but it's better than it was. So.
What are your units on your E. coli and your TMDL value?
What is the limit?
What are the units on your E. coli and your TMDL?
Colonies per 100 milliliters. So the standard is 1,178 colonies per 100 milliliters. Most of our samples run 600 to 800. Probably those orange ones were 1,300 on down. So that's pretty serious when it gets to there.
Do you measure phosphorus?
We measure phosphorus. We do total phosphorus, total nitrogen, dissolved oxygen, TSS, E. coli.
What's TSS?
Total suspended solids. It'd be like the dirt sediment in the water. That was about it for water temp and pH. There's not a TMDL done on phosphorus. I have the data, but it's just, it don't tell you, is it good or is it bad? They haven't done a TMDL on total phosphorus. So I've heard rumors that it's coming next year, but if that's the case, then we'll sure share that with you. Otherwise, it's just plots on a blank graph. You can see when it rains more, it's going to get higher, and when it's not, it gets lower, and you really no way to tell if it's good or bad. So Any other questions?
Mr. Nippling, I'm just wondering, Firestone Creek is impaired. What would it take to get it off the impaired list? And is the water...
I would say right now that with another summer on the total suspended solids, that part would come off in 2 years. We'd have to make some pretty good improvements on E. coli to get it delisted as well, but it's very doable. And TSS is excellent on this. And any other questions?
Is the
Have you worked in other areas besides the Firestone with growers? Have you had good luck with them cooperating?
Yes, we have, and that's been kind of one of our strengths. All three of us are ranchy kind of people, and we communicate well with them and get to share our goals and show how it benefits them as well. And we've had good success. Our project area is quite large. I mean, we work in 16 different counties, but fire steel is one of our main focuses for the next couple of years, and we'll see what we can get done there.
Would it be safe to say, with looking at these lines, especially the standard, that seems to be the only one that's outside of what we're shooting for, but would it be safe to say that we've got some fairly decent natural filtration going on now? We just need to
from the TSS standpoint, it's showing there is, so part of these samples from 2018 were because of high precipitation events. We had overland flooding and more water running down the creek. And to answer Nathan's question too, I think it's very doable to have it done, maybe not in 2 years, but in 4 when the 2020 IR comes out.
Do you have to have a TMDL done to get it off the impaired list?
What's that?
Do you have to have a TMDL completed to remove it from the impaired list?
They look at them every 2 years.
Okay.
And when they're writing the integrated report, they'll look at all your water samples and see if it comes off the list or not. They used to do them just for one component or another. I think they still do. But to make it like a success story, then you have to have everything meet TMDL. So we'd have to get the E. coli too.
I have a couple of questions.
Fire away.
What is TMDL first?
Total maximum daily load.
Okay.
So that's what the state designates as being the maximum for good water.
So over the course of the last couple of years, we've been given a lot of data. And
I'm sure you have.
But to me, I feel like this data feels promising. And so my question is your data different than the data we've been given previously, or is there a way that...
Most of this data comes from Department of Environment and Natural Resources. They've managed the water sampling program here for the last 30 years. We took it over this summer just because they were shorthanded, and we will probably continue to do it.
So the reason I asked that question is because we were told that, and I never can remember if it's 53 or 47, but I think 53% of the phosphate comes from upstream, and this looks pretty good. Yeah. So can I interpret? Right, I get that. I get that, but my impression was that phosphorus comes from some of the same sources.
Attaches to the sediment.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So I recognize that we're not measuring that. We're not comparing apples to apples. But do you understand?
If you can stop the sediment from moving, you can usually stop the phosphorus. So. I'm not trying to sell you anything.
Which is so refreshing. Somehow it makes me believe your data a little more.
So. Any other questions?
Mr. Knipling, there's a lot of dirt cut banks up the Firestone
bare dirt along the edges. Is there any funding or money or mechanisms available to seed those areas or establish buffers?
Yeah, through about all these programs, this program would be able to do it, our 319, James River, CRP, USDA CRP program. We have all kinds of options we can use to address that. So that's where the major source of sediment comes from. It's not coming off a field, it's coming off the banks and the bed of the creek itself. So if you can slow the water down, you quit moving that.
How far are you going from the edge of the fire seal, say north? Are you going a quarter mile, half a mile to fence that, or?
Usually, the next slide will. Okay, this is just an average buffer.
Okay.
The blue, if you can see it, and right on the creek, goes from 0 to 120 feet. That's installed with the USDA CRP program. They get paid an annual rental. We have another program in our 319 portfolio, and it also would be with this SRF. We could go through from 121 feet to 500 feet and pay pretty much the same rental to keep it idle. So we can go either 120 feet or we can go 500. Well, if there's no further questions, thank you for your kind attention. You guys had a real interesting meeting, so I'm sure you're ready to go home.
Joe's the right one to come to.
Thank you.
Thank you. There be no further business, we're adjourned.
Oh, one quick thing. Can we go ahead and request that alley? Put this on. Mr. Mayor, can you see if we can move forward with the Planning Commission to vacate that alley that we approved as a zoning? Thank you.